Do you find yourself choosing the comfort of dullness instead of the discomfort of growing and stretching and adventure and expansion? Join us for this conversation about Gene Key 15 and the wisdom of the Sabian symbols, of how the gift of magnetism creates a healing aura, and the mystery of the city of fluorescence helps you to bloom into your deepest self. Welcome to the Free to Be Free portal. I'm Julia Ananda, your host, here with Gene Key's guide, Margaret Miller. She'll be weaving together her energetic insights for the week, including this summer solstice, along with the wisdom of the Gene Keys and the Sabian symbols. Margaret, I'm looking forward to this incredible discussion with you.
Thank you, Julia. So am I. Yeah, this is a very, very beautiful energy to be contemplating. This Gene Key 15. We'll just jump right in. The shadow of dullness, the gift of magnetism, and the city of fluorescence. And and so if you think about this, every Cancer solstice. And I use that because, of course, it's only summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. It's winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. So, but the Cancer solstice always occurs within this framework of the Gene Key 15 and its gift of magnetism and its city of fluorescence. And so it's interesting to think about that in terms of what it really means and what the solstice really means too, right? And so the solstice is the marking of the farthest north that the direct rays of the sun hit, the farthest north that and the farthest south, right? 23 degrees north and 23 degrees south are the two solstices. And so when that happens, right, we have the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere and the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere. Okay, so it has to do with light, right? It has to do with how we respond to light. And this gene key also has a lot to do with how we and all of creation, all beings, all living things on this planet respond to light. And so, starting with the shadow of dullness, we can feel how when we are not exposed sometimes to enough light, you can kind of feel how our energy changes. Like there's a certain amount of dullness or lethargy that can happen if it's a cloudy day or a foggy day or a rainy day, those where our energy is not as vibrant, it's not as active. And so that's sort of a natural expression of how that dullness can occur. But when we're talking about it in terms of being a shadow, it's really this energy of choosing comfort, which you talked about right in our intro here, choosing comfort over discomfort, or choosing comfort over adventure, like choosing um to dull our senses from whatever is edgy, because and that usually means change. Anything that, anything that we need to change or anything that is changing and that we should be sort of dancing with or adjusting to, but we're resisting it, we'll do things to dull that edge so that we don't we think that we don't have to respond to it, right? So there's so many examples of that, and a lot of times that has to do with our addictive tendencies as well. You know, we can get into the shadow of addiction, where we're dulling our senses with food or alcohol or drugs or substances, or we're overstimulating, because that's also part of the shadow of dullness, where we are so overstimulated by our technologies, by our activities, by keeping ourselves so busy that we're running around without real direction or purpose, right? And both of those conditions are this shadow of dullness, because they cause us to be insensitive, really, and unaware of what that sensation might be trying to tell us. It's this need for us to soothe ourselves beyond, beyond what's reasonable. And oftentimes that we end up in depression. Depression comes from that not being able to bring ourselves out of the shadow of dullness. And it's not just bringing ourselves out, it's allowing ourselves to move through. Almost all the time, these shadows we're we think we're trying to get rid of them, but really what we're trying to do is open ourselves fully to whatever it is they're trying to show us. And the dullness very often is really just asking us to slow down enough for us to receive whatever is trying to be offered to us in this whatever circumstance we're in. So, and one of the things that Richard Rudd talks about in the I think it's in the book, the Gene Keys book, and not necessarily in the audio, where he talks about um, that our attitude, uh, affects our events and our circumstances. And it's really he calls it the first rule of magic, is is that that our attitude about things affects, what we're going to experience. And when we have dulled our senses, when we have succumbed to this shadow of dullness, rather than allowing ourselves just to slow down and find out what's wanting to happen, then we will generally be attracting or putting out these very negative expectations, right? Dullness is sort of this negative acceptance of events, or resignation, a very much a fear-based kind of response. But if we notice, like even in that dullness, if you find yourself in that shadow of dullness, um, there there is a way through, and that is to recognize that emptiness can and that dullness can turn into the emptiness that is expectant, that is going to allow something to be received. Okay, and this is where we start to talk then, or invite in the gift of magnetism. And we often think about, you know, if you think about magnetism, uh, a lot of people talk about like sort of a magnetic personality or whatever, and that's not exactly what this is. That's more about charisma and sort of a bubbling over of energy that that is very that is attractive to people, and it is magnetic in a sense. But magnetism at this gift level is this openness, is this receptivity to whatever is in front of us and not rejecting it based on our biases or based on our judgments, and really truthfully, really truly accepting what is and receiving it, or receiving the person. And when we do that, when we are in our magnetic self, or if we have this gift in our profile, we'll tend to, if we're demonstrating that gift, people will be drawn to us, and circumstances and events, positive events, and maybe even seeming lucky, maybe even seeming like, having the Midas touch or whatever, because are we have this vast expanse of awareness available to us, where things can come in, where this beauty can be magnetized towards us. But it's coming out from within us as well. That magnetism is drawing them in because, or drawing, say, drawing a person closer to you because they feel seen and they feel heard and they feel welcomed in your presence, right? And because you're looking out at them through the eyes of love, with this openness and this expansiveness, right? And so at the highest frequencies of this, then it becomes the siddhi of fluorescence. And I'm probably going to come back and forth between the two because they're very, it's a beautiful kind of a dance where that fluorescence, if you think about something as being fluorescence, you think of, or I think of light. I think of a particular kind of light that's very, very bright, and it's very, yeah, it's very attractive and very beautiful and alive. Like it's electric and it's alive, but it's also means flowering, right? It's fluorescence is flowering. And so it's what happens to us when when that light of love is ignited within us to the point where we our consciousness flowers, where our light flowers right out into the world. And that I love I love in the Gene Keys how Richard Rudd talks about this over and over again in terms of it doesn't happen to the individual. The acidic frequencies don't happen to an individual. There's no individual there anymore. When you're at the acidic frequencies, there's no individual there anymore. And so it happens collectively, just like the flowers that bloom. They may have a certain sort of time frame where they usually bloom, like the foxgloves, the digitalis on our hillside, usually blooms around the 1st of June. Like, usually blooms around the 1st of June, but sometimes there's none, there's just the buds. And then the next day, there's not just one, there's 1,000, right? It happens all at once. And so this fluorescence is what happens with us when that magnetism has taken effect, when it's taken hold, because you can't be around somebody who has that kind of magnetism, who is shining their light in such a, you know, fully loving and compassionate, whatever the words, whatever the gift words you want to use to describe it, can't be around that without your frequency raising as well, right? And so at some point, there's this flowering, and the flowering of our consciousness, which is that the the city of fluorescence.
It reminds me of when we're in sacred ceremony with a group of people for days in a row, and we're all lifting up together, and we're all radiating and blooming and touching maybe a bit of that fluorescence together.
Yes, absolutely. And I love this because when that happens, you can see it shimmering on their faces. You can see it. It's visible. It becomes visible. And I think that more and more we're going to be able to see and experience those things. And it would be, it, not, it would be really good if I also bring in, the connection of this to nature and to the Schumann resonance, and the Schumann resonance is, um, the basically the heartbeat of Gaia, or the rhythm of the beat, or the rhythm of all living things. And in when we are resonant with that Schumann frequency, then we are slowed down, right? We're slowed down, and we are aligned with the natural rhythm, the healthy, the healing rhythms. And so when that happens through whatever, you know, uh, methodology or system we might use to slow ourselves down, and certainly just being out in nature, or being with a dog who's napping, or like just copying that deep relaxation and that deep slow rhythmic breath, when we use breath work or guided visualization or meditation, or just being out in nature, and allowing the earth to show us that rhythm. Hello, beautiful one. I mentioned, I couldn't help it. I knew that they were there. I couldn't help mentioning them. So they pop up. They're those beautiful dogs. But so so that resonance with nature then teaches us and shows us very naturally how to begin to embody and to, exude and emanate this uh, magnetism, right? And it really does. I mean, it does end up having to do with actualization and manifestation and so forth. That's not, that's just a natural byproduct, because we always are attracting to us whatever frequency we're emanating, right? That's important to remember. I think this is really important for me to remember. As we start being able to actualize things in our lives, and they do always match whatever frequency that we were putting out. And so I think it's an important thing to remember with this 15th gene key. And so this week, just really being present to that. So I want to go on, and I might come back to that a little bit, but I want to go on and talk about the Sabian symbols that are associated with this, and see what um, what the resonance is with the Sabian symbols and this gene key. So we're at the last degree of Gemini, Gemini 30, and it's a parade of bathing beauties before large beach crowds. And and so it's you can kind of see it. You can kind of see this. They're like these beautiful flowers, right? They're it's really talking about the setting of social standards through personal excellence and sometimes through competition, right? Through like showing off. And you can kind of imagine in a way they don't have this consciousness, but the flowers kind of, show themselves off and this setting of a standard for us to aspire to. And it's when I chose a quote from James Burgess, who has a beautiful website on the Sabian symbols, jamesburgess.com. And so it says, when we have awareness of both spiritual and physical magnetism, then we are endowed with the radiant light of nature, and we are said to glow, right? And we know this. We know this. When we are in tune, when we are attuned to the natural rhythm, to our own naturalness, we glow and people see it. And that's also what you were talking about when we are in ceremony over a period of time. Yes, I mean, we glow and we shimmer and we are fluorescent, it's really is beautiful. So then the, from there, we move out of Gemini into the first degree of Cancer. And Cancer is, again, one of our cardinal signs. And the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn are like the four directions in the astrological wheel. And they are always the signs of initiation because they herald the seasons, the spring, the summer, the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the fall equinox, and the winter solstice. And so they are really strong initiatory energies. And so Cancer is the first water sign that we move into, as we're moving from Aries to Cancer. It's the first water sign. And so we're initiating ourselves into water, into the Cancer energies of growing and claiming and maturing and centering and uniting and belonging, connectedness, safety, security, home, family. These are all really strong Cancer energies. And so the solstice, of course, always is marked by that. That's the moment that we move into 1 degree of Cancer. So 1 degree of Cancer in the Sabian symbols is on a ship, sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. And this is talking about a reorientation, right? A new commitment, a new beginning, a new decision that's made, a new flag is raised. We're nurturing something new, right? And we are flying that flag now. And we are it's like it could be maybe that we raise the same flag. It could be that it's the same loyalties, but we're raising it anew. And we are, making a decision about our values and our loyalties. And so at the really basic level, our loyalties as humans go, usually first to our human family, to our a family of origin often, but ultimately to our human family. And then to the, then we, as our consciousness raises, then we feel our connectedness to our larger family, to our family with the plants and the animals, and all of creation, right? And then maybe even to our galactic family, who knows? You know, the and so this is, to me, the Cancer solstice is an invitation to really really nurture ourselves, our lives, our families, our gardens, our, and to really allow ourselves to grow and to flower, because this is the time. This is and in the especially in the northern hemisphere, right? This is the time of fluorescence. Well, in the southern hemisphere, then how does it relate? Well, there's this deepening at the internal level. Like if you think about us in the winter solstice, there's this going under the blanket and going into the depths. And where is the light? Where is that light shining from within us? And how can we nurture? Because it's still that nurturing energy of Cancer, of home and family and so forth. So it can relate to both. So moving on to Cancer 2, a man on a magic carpet hovers over a large area of land. And so this is talking about expanding our perception, like being able to see things from a higher or a bigger, larger perspective, right? So elevating our consciousness enough to see the bigger picture and to be able to see ourselves as part of a whole, as an integral part of a whole. And and that is it very much associated with this energy of magnetism, right? And fluorescence, because in order for us to come out of the shadow of dullness, we have to look through the eyes of love. We have to be able to be residing in our hearts and have slowed down our our breath and our physiology to match nature, right? To come into that more natural rhythm. And when we do that, several things happen. And one of them is that our consciousness elevates, right? And our perspective elevates. And I love this symbol because you can kind of, a lot of times in guided visualizations and stuff, I'll bring us, out where we're looking at ourselves from that higher perspective, right? And just doing that, like even in a conversation, if you're having a difficulty or you're finding yourself in that shadow of dullness, it's like stepping back and being the one witnessing yourself in that place changes everything, because you've changed your view, you've changed how you're going to perceive something because you're looking at it from a different angle, and everything looks different from a different angle, right? So this is a beautiful symbol, that Cancer 2. Cancer 3, a man bundled in fur is leading a reindeer. And this has a lot of different symbolism, but the biggest one it has is talking about the strength of will and building determination through the facing of challenges. And and so it really is about, at some point we have to overcome the dullness. We have to step out into the discomfort of whatever it is and meet those growth edges, right? And this reindeer also, the antlers of the reindeer are very much associated with expanding our consciousness and touching spirit, like going out into the spiritual realms to receive. And and so, the man is bundled up and ready to, meet the challenges of the extremes. And this is also where dullness, it's kind of interesting, um, how it is the lack of extreme, right? It's not necessarily negative or positive. It's maybe somewhere in the middle. It's where you have found that comfort zone, right? Where you're not too hot, you're not too cold. Like the temperature is just right, everything's just right. You have your umbrella drink or whatever it is, and everything's just right, but there's no growth, no expansion of consciousness. So I love this symbol for that because it's bringing that challenge in. Then finally, Cancer 4 degrees of Cancer. I love this symbol too. A cat arguing with a mouse. Attempting self-justification, right? It's like rationalization or the releasing of our self-justification, and making our claim, our selfish claim to whatever it is we're trying to do, or uh, without apology. Like there's this energy of we can we can talk ourselves into or out of just about anything. And it's about as useful as a cat arguing with a mouse or a mouse arguing with a cat, right? Like what's the point of that? They see things from a very different perspectives, right? And so they're they're never going to come to something that's agreeable to both of them, most likely, right? And so you can kind of feel into this energy of how we argue ourselves and keep ourselves maybe sometimes in that shadow of dullness and not willing to change our point of view or change our activities to meet something higher and to come into that amazing energy of magnetism and that siddhi, that Siddhic frequency, which is the Siddhic frequencies are always like this descending of grace, this something that I guess flowers from within us, but also descends upon us. And there's no timing except for the right divine timing that we have no idea when or where it might occur.
Yeah, it's a blessing. Comes upon us. When I think about the shadow and the gift of Gene Key 15, it feels like there's a lot of choice there versus the city where it comes upon us. So in our choices, we can choose dullness through actions of addiction or distraction or just making a choice to wrap up in a blanket and not deal with the world. Um, and then when we get to magnetism, I thought magnetism was more, before we started talking about this, I thought it was more about projecting, people who project that charisma. But magnetism in this choice of opening ourselves, slowing ourselves down, deepening ourselves, and connecting to the resonance of the earth, where we're end up seeing the world through love, seeing our interactions through love. That's a, a, almost like a light bulb going on in my mind that it's not a projection. It's this power of the opening, right? And the clarity. And so I think that when we're learning these wisdom traditions, it's very important that we learn that we can make choices. And we may have to make the choice again and again and again within an hour
Yes.
to open, right? Or to choose discomfort instead of comfort. But we have the ability to open into these higher states of
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. So I love that you brought that in, and it kind of reminded me also of the wisdom keeper for this. I kind of wanted to ask some of the questions from this wisdom keeper. Can you see her?
Oh, she's beautiful. Magnetism. Mm.
Yes, magnetism. And she says, her question is, do you try to escape dullness and feelings of emptiness through a flurry of activity that doesn't truly feed you? Or do you collapse into it through depression or resignation? What quality would you like to emanate from within? Do you experiment? Do an experiment, sorry. Do an experiment where you embrace dullness completely. Go for it. See what happens. Spend time with a completely relaxed animal. Learn from them. There's more. But I just thought those were beautiful ones. Like, and to think about like when you have that feeling of dullness, which is different from boredom, right? There's a distinction between it, uh, and it's the boredom has anxiety with it. Like you're wanting, like I'm bored, I want to find something to do. Where dullness is like, I don't want to do anything. Like soul, like I have no energy, I have no drive, I have no.
Does dullness always have a bit of not wanting to deal with?
Think so.
Mhm.
I would think so. Um, yeah, not wanting to, not wanting to deal or not wanting to feel, right? Not wanting to, yeah, not wanting to go to that uncomfortable edge, not wanting to go to where our growth is getting ready to happen. And so I think that, that's a really good experiment. Like, what if you were to allow that dullness to be there without trying to fix it, without trying to mask it, without, you know, you might find that it turns into that more beautiful, expansive emptiness that happens when we meditate, or that happens, when we really sort of empty out our minds and drop into that resonance with nature and the earth.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
isn't it
wonderful.
beautiful?
Yes, yes. And I love the way that um, the Sabian symbols also give us the wisdom that fits with the gene keys for this week and this season. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we invite you, our listeners, to contemplate on these three words: dullness, magnetism, and fluorescence, and feel into your life where they come up for you, or where you can choose or be open for them. So thank you for joining us today at the Free to Be Free portal. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. See you.